On this episode of Locked On Angels, the Halos played the most Angels game last night. They did some really good things, and we're going to share, but they also hurt themselves with bad defense and bullpen work, and I guess we got to talk about that too. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to get back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On Everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube and leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Not Taylor Ward. This is Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
It's our fourth season here as the host of Locked On Angels, here every weekday talking Angels baseball with you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. On today's show, we're going to give you an update on Mike Trout. Where does he stand, and where and when will he return? Consider this question. Should the Angels bring back Bud Black back in black? Let's go. But first, Mike, let's talk about the disappointing loss to the Padres that happened last night as the Angels lose 6-4.
Yeah, this game was fun, but this game was also annoying, right? And it was because of our favorite team. They made us really excited, and then they annoyed us big time. And it was their mistakes, John, that got the best of them. You can't really blame one person. And in fact, Ron Washington made some really good decisions last night. And I will support him in those decisions. So there's two moments in this game that changed things for the Halos. The first moment was in the bottom of the fifth, John. It was when the defense just fell apart. And Soriano was cruising in this game until that inning. And then he walks, Xander Bogaerts, Jake Cronenworth, singles to right. And then Joe Adell just bobbles the ball. It bounces up, hits him in the face. He can't really collect himself. And it allows Bogaerts to go to third base. It was the fifth error this season for Joe Adell. He's got 4 in center field, and he's got 1 in right field. And it just completely, again, dismantles the narrative that Ron Washington is really helping these guys develop and be consistent on the defensive side. And the problem is that we just haven't seen that on a regular basis, on a consistent basis. And Joe Adell, who had a great defensive year last year, has really struggled this year. And if we're honest, this was kind of the trajectory that he was on last year. Remember, first half of the season wasn't good, and then suddenly something clicked for him. Unfortunately, it clicked when the games really didn't matter last season, and that's where it's really frustrating for Joe Adell.
Yeah, and when you moved him to center field out of right field, where he's a Gold Glove finalist in right field, has a great job, doing a great job out there. One of the top guys in terms of defensive runs saved in right field last year. You move him to center field. Now he's back in right again. I just, I'm not going to give him an excuse. At the same time, where's the fundamentals here, Mike? Where's the, where's the Ron Washington guru-ness? What changed between this season and last season, right?
Yeah. Well, and I would say last season, there's a lot of messes as well. And so maybe he needs more time, but the problem is that when the Angels make their mistakes, it happens at important, significant times. And that's one of the examples here. Soriano then throws a wild pitch, and Logan O'Hoppe throws down to second base to try to get the runner, and he throws it away. It was the second error of the inning, O'Hoppe's third error of the season. And then Martin Maldonado bunted, and the Padres took the lead. Just a bad inning for the Halos. 2 runs scored from a leadoff walk and 2 errors. John, simple fundamentals are just sometimes really hard for our favorite team, aren't they?
Where's the Travis d'Arnaud wants Logan O'Hoppe to be the best catcher in Angels history? Because we're not seeing it so far from O'Hoppe, and they even discussed some stance changes behind the plates for him, some squatting changes, I should say. And there was Wayne Randazzo pointed out on the broadcast, Logan, pick up the ball with your non-glove hand and throw it in there to get somebody out, right? And so that was an issue. Bottom of the 8th, bottom of the 9th, Ryan Zefferjon gave up the lead. It was 4-2 Angels, and then it was 4-4. He walked Tatis, got a rise to pop out. walked Machado, strikes out Jackson Merrill. Problem is, Mike, the walks came in to bite Zephyr John. And the problem with Zephyr John was that he was the right guy to go to in that moment. So again, credit to Ron Washington for not making a bozo mistake, going to a Reed Detmers, but the walks are going to come back to bite you. And that's exactly what happened. Gavin Sheets gets a dinky-do, a .070 expected batting average on that bloop single to score the run. The ball drops in between Lugo, Ward, and Neto in left center. Taylor Ward, why are you standing at the warning track for a guy who's a lefty and a huge pull hitter? Why are you all the way up against the wall, my friend?
I don't know what the scouting report was for that at bat, John, but it was wrong. It was the wrong scouting report.
They don't give the scouting reports. It's too much information for these guys now. It's just they don't want to overload these guys. They just want them.
And maybe that's the problem, because I know Lugo was playing more right center, where you would probably want him to be, because you have a left-handed batter up in Gavin Sheets, and so you're going to play him a little bit to pull, and then when he bloops one in, you've got Taylor Ward, who's not fast, who's not great, not fleet of foot, and he's on the warning track. What are you doing out there? And Zach Neto is the closest to this ball.
Right.
And so that was the problem with that inning. That could have been the final out. It would have slowed everything down, but it dropped into that, forbidden Bermuda Triangle in between all of those guys. And then Zephyr John throws a wild pitch. The tying run scores at the time. Then he walks Xander Bogaerts. Wash finally comes out to get Zephyr John, brings in Hector Neris, and he walks the first batter to load the bases. And then he strikes out Jason Hayward. So that's where the lead went in the 8th inning. The Angels just couldn't close the door.
Here's the thing. And for anybody who says, you don't need stats, you don't need statistics, you don't need data. Mike, Gavin Sheets has pulled the ball 30.6% of the time in the air this season. He's hit it out to straightaway 17.5% of the time and 20% of the time the opposite way. So a very large pull hitter in the air, and for him to do that 30.5% of the time should have given you an indication of where you need to stand when you're going up against somebody like that.
Yeah. And then bottom 9, Kenley Jansen comes in, walks the leadoff guy, then gives up a 2-run home run to Fernando Tatis Jr. John, I mean, when it comes with the territory with Kenley Jansen, I think, and this is not an excuse for him, it's just a reality. It seems like when a closer comes in and it's not a closing situation, they just don't really have the focus or have the stuff, right? And this game was one of those games where Kenley's trying to hold the game, and you could have sent this to extra innings. And I really felt like that previous inning is where all the momentum just was completely lost. All the air was let out of the balloon, because the Angels did come back in this game. And those were some of the good moments in this game, right?
Yeah, the Angels were down 2-1 in the top of the 7th. Rengifo gets a 2-out walk against Dylan Cease, who struck out 10 on his way to the 7th inning.
Yeah.
No adjustments seemed to be made against Dylan Cease. They were still chasing that slider, doing all that stuff, right?
And there was one at bat that was very telling. It was against Kyron Paris. He didn't throw him anything but a slider. And Kyron just kept swinging and swinging and swinging and swinging. I noticed, John, that the left-handed batters were actually making contact on the slider when it was in the zone, Moncada and Nolan Shawnuel. But the right-handed batters struggled to make contact because they were just swinging at everything. Everything that was either in the zone or out of the zone, they were swinging at. The problem was that anything that was in the zone, they just couldn't make contact on. They were swinging over it. And I'm sitting here on my couch with my wonderful pistachios, right? I'm watching the game. I'm not an athlete going, he's going to throw you a slider, bro. Don't swing at this. And yet they're swinging at every single pitch, including that at bat. I think he threw 6 pitches to Kyron Paris, and Paris only got sliders, and he swung at every single pitch.
Yeah. So that's the problem, Mike, when you have a one-dimensional approach at the plate and you're being preached to that you got to do it this way. You got to do it this way. It just, where's the adjustments, you guys? You've seen them for the 3rd time now in this game. So fortunately, Luis Rengifo had a 2-out walk against Cease. That's what yanked him. The first and only walk he gave up.
Right.
Mike Schilt comes out and says, all right. And that's surprising to me, because Padres bullpen, since that blow up against the Yankees last week, has not been fantastic, Mike. So in this one, Jeremiah Estrada comes out, first pitch he throws, Joe Adell doubles that to center, swung at the first pitch, something Johnny Washington has encouraged Adell to do. They've been better when Adell makes contact on the first pitch.
Yeah.
Then given what you said about Kyron Paris, Matthew Lugo pinch hits for him, hits a 2-run home run on the first pitch to give the Halos the lead, the second home run of his career. Both of them are pinch hit home runs. The Angels score 3 runs in that inning, and they have a 2-run lead. And it's a shame because Jose Soriano comes out there, has a gutsy performance, and was able to finish it in the bottom of the 7th. But the Angels didn't hold on to it for him.
Yeah, that was a big moment in the game for Soriano. He got the leadoff batter to strike out, then he gives up a single to Bogaerts, and then he got Cronenworth to fly out, and then he walks Jason Hayward. Now, this would have been a moment where Wash comes out and he takes Soriano out of the game. He's over 100 pitches. There's 2 runners on, but Wash doesn't even move from the dugout. They leave Soriano in the game, and I love that. And even if it went wrong, I love that because Soriano responds by striking out Diaz to get out of the inning. And we discussed this last week with Locked On Everydayer Cope. Coach Cope came on and talked about one of the solutions to the struggling bullpen is give the starters 1 extra inning, like one extra batter, right? And that was great trust instilled into Soriano. He gets a tough luck, no decision in this game. 7 innings, 4 hits, 2 runs, 1 earned, 3 walks, 5 Ks, 107 pitches. John's the second time in his career he's reached 100 pitches, and he looked good against a really good Padres team.
They got to figure out what's going on with him at home because he's not pitched well at home. I don't know what it is for him, but they need to figure out. They got to talk that through and try to understand what's going on there. Zach Neto led off this game with a solo home run, which is great because it kind of goes to that 1 through 10 sort of lineup that we talked about preseason, his 6th home run of the year. Here's a tweet from Locked On Hall of Famer Brent McGuire, former host of the show. Among 182 qualified hitters, Zach Neto entered Tuesday with the largest increase in average exit velocity, positive 6.2 miles per hour, largest increase in launch angle sweet spot, 26%, 8th largest increase in expected weighted on base average, plus 80 points, and the 9th largest increase in hard hit rate, almost 13%. So something Neto's been doing over the offseason is paying off because he certainly has been super effective at the plate this season. Nolan Shonwell goes 3 for 4, and that sucks too because it was a wasted start there. And Jackson Merrill tried to do what he did the night before, couldn't make that diving catch, so Nolan finally wins one against Jackson Merrill. But Mike, a bummer of the game because some good performances around here, and then just the fundamentals out the window. And it's so frustrating when this is supposed to be your brand, I suppose, especially with Ron Washington at the helm. But something's missing, and we talked about it the other day. This team has been fundamentally broken for a while where they just can't make the simple things. It's like everything goes out the window when it's crunch time, right?
Yeah, and they get panicky, they get nervous, they get anxious. At least that's what it looks like. And even on some of their throw down to like second base from Logan O'Hoppe, he's thrown the ball away multiple times. And from now on, I think that the coach needs to say to him, bro, just don't throw it down because you're getting too panicky. Your process is wrong. When Wayne Randazzo is telling you, hey, Logan, don't pick it up with your glove hand and then pick it up with your throwing hand. If you're going to do that, you're just not accurate. And right now he's -6 defensive run save. Like he's struggling behind the plate. And I think in this context, the Angels are fighting against themselves.
Oh, 100%.
And if they just played good defense last night, right? Then this game isn't 4-4. It's 4-3, maybe, right? Like maybe 4-4. It doesn't get there. I mean, if they're not standing on the warning track, it's at least 4-3. And so,
and it's 4-2 in the 9th. Probably it's not tied up if they played fundamental baseball. And maybe Kenley still gives up that 2-run shot to Tatis, but then it's 4-4 and you have a couple of extra innings to play with. At that point. So that was a bummer of a situation as well.
And I don't want to play the what if game, but with this team, unfortunately, that's what they're known for, right? They buttercup you. They look really good. And then they have moments where it's like, well, what if that didn't happen? They just aren't focused or something happens. And it wasn't as if Joe Adell wasn't getting action out in the outfield. It wasn't as if Soriano was pitching a boring game and walking a lot of guys. Like they were constantly moving. It's just like you're zoning out. Little plays like that are what are going to sink your team, especially against a good team like the Padres. And that's ultimately why, as a fan, I'm just like, man, come on. Because this is a really good team that you had on the ropes the second night in a row.
Yeah, the series was within reach, and they could have taken at least 2 out of 3 last night, and now they have the chance to do that today. And then they got to go to LA to face the Dodgers, who, by the way, I think they're
getting smashed by the A's.
I know. What in the world? 11-1. Oh my goodness. All right, friends. We appreciate you making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up, we'll give you an update on Mike Trout. When is he coming back, and when can we look forward to seeing him in the lineup again? We'll get into all of that coming right up.
Hey, get the supplies you need from the site that's made for skilled trades at SupplyHouse.com. Whether you're into plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order products online. They got a really easy-to-use website filled with helpful resources and the latest product info, help you get the job done right. Plus, they got an inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400-plus top brands. You're going to find what you need. You're not going to need to go anywhere else. And they deliver it fast, coast to coast. If you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service. You're going to talk to a real person when you make a phone call every single time. And if you're a trade pro looking for a bit of an extra edge, they have a free Trade Master program, offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, so you're going to get a real person on your own phone line. Love that. Free shipping and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage of this. Now it's your turn. Make it 1,001. Join the Trade Master program at supplyhouse.com/TM, and you can start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. And then when you check out, use our promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's a big deal, especially when you're ordering a lot of things. So go to supplyhouse.com today.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. I barely made it through that first segment, and my wife, I'm feeling under the weather, so my wife got me the Gingerade kombucha. A little spicy, a little too much ginger in there. So if you saw me on the video side, I'm okay. I survived. But Mike, let's talk about Bud Black, old friend of the Halos. He was fired by the Rockies last week. A lot of Angel fans said, bring him back. Get him back in the organization. So the problem here is that really that Rockies team being the punching bag of MLB right now, is it really his fault?
Right.
That, the Monforts who own the Rockies, because they just, they don't do anything for their fan base. They got a great stadium.
Right.
People show up, and yet it feels awfully familiar in terms of how that owner treats their fan base. So Bud Black, of course, was expended in this situation. A couple questions. Would it be a good idea? And would he come back? And before we get to those questions, let's get some history on Bud Black with the Angels, Mike.
Yeah, he was hired in November of 1999 as a pitching coach, and the pitching staff he took over was not too good. They had Tim Belcher, Omar Olivares. Chuck Finley, of course, was great, but he was on the tail end of his career. Kenny Hill, who was good with the Expos. Remember the Expos? And then he came over. And then Steve Sparks, who had a knuckleball and was not great for the Halos. That staff, including the bullpen, had a 4.79 ERA in 1999. When Black took over, they had to rework that staff. They got Scott Schoenweiss, Kent Bottenfield, Ramon Ortiz, Jared Washburn, and Ken Hill. That staff had a 5.02 team ERA. And that's important because a lot of people have just rose-colored glasses when they think about Bud Black and this pitching staff. He really had to work with some no-names and make them into big names. We'll get to that in just a moment. But in 2002, of course, Angels won the World Series, and their pitching staff, bullpen and starters, pitched to a 3.69 ERA under Bud Black. They had a 2.47 batting average against. That had Lackey and Apier and Aaron Seeley and Jared Washburn and Ramon Ortiz. And then later, you got to work with Bartolo Colon and Kelvin Escobar. Here's some numbers, John. In 2005, the pitching staff had a team ERA of 3.68. In 2006, they had a 4.04 ERA. Both times, they were third in the league. Now, throughout his entire time with the Halos, 2000 to 2006, the Angels consistently ranked among the top 5 in the league for team ERA, and he played a pivotal role, Bud Black, in developing some of the young pitchers. I do have an argument to be made for that, because I know often people will say that Barry Enright hasn't been great for the Halos in his time, but if we bring in Bud Black, he's inheriting the same pitching staff that Barry Enright has, right? Bud Black actually, in his time with the Halos, the Angels did make some good moves in bringing in guys like Kelvin Escobar and Bartolo Colon. And so that was a benefit to Bud Black. Now, for context, here's Barry Enright's tender so far with the Angels in 2023. The team had a team ERA of 4.64. That was 23rd in baseball. And then last year, 4.75. So similar to
4.57.
4.57. So similar to Bud Black's time, at least early with the Halos.
Yeah, in 2023, you still had Matt Wise, whatever the heck he was doing.
Right.
And then 2024, Barry Enright comes in, helps improve that a little bit. But remember, Matt Wise had the benefit of Shohei Ohtani for the time that he was here as well. Here's some of the starters that Black got to coach: Jared Washburn, John Lackey, Ramon Ortiz, Kelvin Escobar, Irvin Santana, Bartolo Colon, Aaron Seeley, as you mentioned, Scott Schoenweiss, and then the bullpen arms that he got to coach: Troy Percival, K-Rod, Brendan Donnelly, Scott Shields, Ben Weber. Left the Angels in 2006 to manage the Padres. He did come back in 2015 as a special assistant to the GM, but then eventually got hired by the Rockies. And so back to the questions here, Mike. Should the Halos bring him back? And in what role? And would he even come back?
Yeah, I think I don't think that they will. If they do bring him back, it will probably be what he was in 2015, special assistant to somebody. I don't think he'll come back just to be a pitching coach. And I don't necessarily think bringing him back to be a pitching coach would be a wise move for the reasons why I mentioned. He had a general manager, and at the time, already allowing the team to spend some money on some key free agents, but they also had great development in the minor leagues. And so he inherited a lot of really good guys and then helped them to develop. And so bringing him back in, I think that you're going to try to rekindle what happened in 6 years in the early 2000s. I think that would be kind of silly and kind of foolish. And if he does come back, which he's obviously open to because he's done it before, I think it's going to be more of a special assistant role than anything else. Ultimately, John, I don't see him coming back because he does feel kind of like the old guard, and Artie's new guard is very different than the old guard. And I don't know if there would be a relationship there that would be good or bring synergy to this team.
I still think he's a good mind to have in the organization. So if there's a place for him, it's not going to be the pitching coach, it's not going to be the bullpen coach, it's not going to be anything like that. But I think that he's a good mind in the organization, especially when it comes to pitching. And, it's interesting. His time in Colorado feels a lot like the Angels.
Yes,
you got the owners who spend on one big free agent, Chris Bryant in that case, and that turned out to be a disaster.
They're Anthony Rendon, right? Yeah.
No kidding. So a team with young talent who hasn't really been developed yet. And, there's it's crazy because there's actually some good pitching on the Rockies and the rotation, but they all have losing records and they, aren't giving up that many runs per game, but they just don't have the run support. So what do you think, Mike? The Colorado situation, is that on Bud Black or is this an organizational issue?
I think it's an organizational issue. I don't think it's on Bud Black. Obviously, I think he's a good dude, and I think that he could bring a lot of good things. He hasn't really been a successful manager. He feels kind of like the same vein of Mike Scioscia. I don't know how connected he is to some of the forward thinking in baseball right now. He doesn't feel like an AJ Hinch with Detroit, right? He kind of feels like a Bruce Bochy, but he needs really good players around him. And I think that that's what has allowed Bochy to be good, is he's got good players, talented players around him, and he's able to coach up a culture. But if you're trying to coach up a culture and bring a team into 2025, I don't think that Bud Black is that guy to be able to do that. So most of this, I would say, is probably on the Colorado Rockies organization because they just didn't surround him with great players. Maybe 5% of it is Bud Black is similar to Mike Scioscia, where the game kind of, for lack of a better term, has passed him by.
Yeah. It's interesting, that he had to be the scapegoat in this situation, but maybe they want to bring in somebody who's a little bit more forward thinking, but at the end of the day, I just don't trust the Rockies to be able to do something like that.
Well, there's a guy missing in this starting lineup, John.
Who?
Mike Trout. And I know that with all of that has happened in the last couple of weeks, like that kind of has been stuffed down. So how's Trouty doing? We heard yesterday, Jeff Fletcher tweeted that he was going to run on an Alter G treadmill. Yeah. It's a anti-gravity treadmill, and I'd like to try that.
Is that the one they wouldn't buy for Albert Pujols when he was rehabbing?
And I think you're right. Yeah.
I guess they finally got it. What, 10 years later? They finally got one.
Trout's just said pretty please. Now, Fletcher said Trout said the agility test went really well yesterday, that he's running at 50% body weight, and that went well. When asked how he's feeling overall, Trout said he feels great. He was worried at the beginning, but the sharpness that he was feeling the day after the game that he hurt his knee is completely gone, he said. And then he's really hopeful that he can come back. And one of the things that he has to do to be able to come back is he's got to run. And he said that's just the biggest thing. Swinging, it's not bothering me, he said. Feels good. Nothing feels bad. I just need to progress and start to run. He says, I don't have a day for a timeline, but he does feel great. John, all of this feels different than previous conversations about Trout and injuries. We're seeing him on the field, working out, doing those things. Does this make you go, okay, maybe he's coming back not in September, like he's coming back maybe in June, right? Like how are you feeling about what you're reading and hearing right now?
You are much more optimistic than I am about this, the way that you phrase that. Does this feel better than it has in the past? Because look, I mean, I feel like we've had this song and dance before, especially with the not the Achilles, but the meniscus tear last year. And then he gets into one game and re-tears it, right? And that was AAA. And so it's Mike, it's one of those things, I'll believe it when I see it. Sure. And I know he's been out there. I know he's been running. He's been working on drills and stuff like that in the field, or at least running, I should say. But I just, pardon me if I don't have the rose-colored glasses on this, because I feel like we've heard this a lot before. Now, I know maybe the injury is not as severe as some of the other stuff that's happened to him. And again, it was a bone bruise because his two bones in his knee did clank together when he was trying to run that out. And we had that conversation last week about how do you protect Trout from himself? And the problem is you can't go 120% Trout. You gotta dial it back. Right. And so, yeah, I wish that I was confident, and this is good news. I'm not going to say it's not good news, but I just subscribe to the idea of I'll believe it when I see it. But
when he's in the lineup, when he's playing, right? Yeah, I just asked a question, John. You don't have to come at me. But I'm with you. I'll believe it when I see it as well, because we just don't know, and the Angels don't communicate, and that's been kind of the frustrating thing. Is they just shoulder irritation for Ben Joyce, 60-day IL, right? So we just don't know the specifics. So I appreciated some of the details and that we got to see that. I hope that we get to see him. My question is, how much of an impact is he going to make when he does return? Now, Jeff Fletcher tweeted out yesterday, the Angels leaders with runners in scoring position. Trout is at the top or close to the top of that list. And so that's, I think, where he can make an impact. I know immediately those watching and listening are like, no way is he at the top of that list, because it doesn't feel like that. I get that. But Ward's at the bottom. That's not a surprise. But I wonder what kind of impact he'll be able to have when he returns. I know when Zach Neto returned, we were like, man, he's probably got to kind of warm up to getting on the field, all of those things. I was wrong, because that guy just immediately went full bore into playing, and I love that. I just don't know what Trout can actually do, and I wonder if we'll find him more at DH than we'll find him in right field.
Well, they certainly have, they've got Joe Adell, they've got Matthew Lugo, Taylor Ward, Kyron Paris, Jorge Soler, who's been playing out in the outfield a lot. I know he's been DHing more frequently, but it kind of lends credence to the fact that, hey, maybe Trout doesn't need to be in right field all the time. Especially, Mike, if you've got Matthew Lugo, who, I know he came into center field last night, but it would have been real nice if he was in left field to make that play, that dinky-do Gavin Sheets bloop. Because, the night before he was able to get Xander Bogaerts at the plate with an awesome throw. So, I find that if you want to provide some sort of solution to this whole Trout conundrum. It's that you've got options. And I know Adell's been bad in the outfield, but you've got options to where you don't need to put Trout in the outfield every night. I know that historically he's done better in the outfield versus DHing while he's at the plate. That might just be a mindset thing, but I don't think he's been terrible as a DH so far this season. When he comes back, I think that what already has been a pretty effective top of the order, especially with Moncada swinging it the way he's been swinging it lately, that also gives you a lot of options at the top. And if Zach Neto continues to lead off and get you a solo home run or gets on base one way or the other, then follow that up with Trout. You know what I mean? Like get his bat up there soon as well, because the Angels need all the runs that they can get, especially early in the game, because when they jump out to an early lead, it's so much better on their starters. It's so much better because they don't feel the pressure of having to be perfect, which we've seen over and over again.
Right.
And so if they get out to an early lead, yeah, maybe it's Neto and maybe it's Trout. Fine. And they're 1-2. I know it's not a traditional thing, but if you get yourself out to an early lead between those two, I think some really good things can happen.
Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB Game Night. You'll find every game, every night, all season long. You're going to get local analysis on a national scale, and you can find Game Night on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, be sure to give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Whether you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube. Find today's show. Get in the comments section. We'd love to hear from you. We always do our best to get back to everybody. Mike, what do we have on deck for Thursday's show?
Let's talk Kyron Paris. What's the thought process on him right now? I know he's struggling. Then you've got Matthew Lugo coming up. And are they just not figuring out Matthew Lugo and they figured out Kyron Paris? There's a lot to discuss. What are they doing with him? We're going to talk about that and share details tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
All right. Looking forward to that conversation. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, everybody. And we'll see you back here on Thursday.
I had to rewrite the show 14 times because of that stupid game last night. Get a
Such
win.
is life.